Welcome, everybody. We are so excited to have you here on our 26th session in our virtual workshop series. It's great to see everybody here on Zoom and those of you who are watching live on Facebook. My name is Elise DeNorfia. I am usually the backseat technology person, but we're doing a little role reversal today. So Brian is going to be doing the technology. I am your MC for the evening. Welcome. So happy to have you here. We hope that you guys are all enjoying these sessions and that you encourage all of your members to join us every Wednesday at 7 p.m. If any of your members are not receiving our emails, you can contact our education committee at education@newenglandkiwanis.org, and we will look into it and make sure that they are on our email list. The email address will pop up in the chat if it hasn't already. Oh, there it is. Look at Brian being on top of things. Reminder to all of you that our workshops have the potential to count as interclubs on your monthly secretary reports. If your club has enough members attending this workshop, you get to report an interclub for each individual club in attendance. To help everyone determine the number of clubs they can report, we ask that all attendees send a quick message in the chat with your name and club. If your club is eligible for an interclub, you can either write down the names of the clubs in attendance, click the ellipses, the ... next to the chat to save the chat so you can review the club names later, or visit our Google Drive of resources for a list of clubs represented at each workshop, compiled by our amazing committee's interclub liaison, David Griffin. You can always find a link to that folder in your weekly confirmation email in the bottom. Before we start tonight's workshop, we have some housekeeping items. We ask that you keep yourself muted to assure an uninterrupted presentation. You're welcome to keep your camera on. It's nice to see everyone's bright and shining faces, but it's not required unless you're a presenter, and then you have to leave your cameras on. If you want to see the optimal viewing of tonight's presentation, you might want to change your Zoom to speaker view by clicking on the right, in the top right, it says view. You can change that button to speaker view. There will be a presentation, so you should be able to see the presenter and the presentation that's being shared. If you have any questions for tonight's presenters, please feel free to post them in the chat. If you're watching on Facebook, please comment on the live stream with your questions. We will have time for question and answer at the end. Tonight's presentation will be about 1 hour. You'll be able to find recordings of the workshop on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. So now let's get started. Tonight's session is focused on chartering service leadership programs, often referred to as Kiwanis SLPs. We have 4 excellent presenters with us tonight. We have Circle K District Administrator Maryann Belason. We have Key Club District Administrator Will Bradford. We have immediate past Circle K International Governor Alison Lunny, and immediate past Key Club Lieutenant Governor Rodrigues. These Kiwanians and SLP members will share their perspectives, tips, and the nuts and bolts of chartering an SLP club in your own community. Without further ado, I pass the presentation over to them.
Thank you, Elise. I just wanted to start off very quickly by thanking everybody for joining us this evening. Chartering new SLP clubs is a topic that I personally care very deeply about. I reflect often on the impact that Key Club and Circle K had on me as I was growing up. And the only reason that I got those opportunities is because my parents happened to buy a house in one half of one town in Connecticut when they moved to Connecticut when I was in preschool. And if they hadn't made that decision, if they had found a different house in another community, you know, I don't know where I would be today. So it's really a huge impact that having Key Club in my teenage years had on me. There are countless teenagers, countless kids, countless college students who don't get those opportunities because they live in communities that don't have Kiwanis. So, we can talk about expanding Kiwanis, but we can also talk about expanding SLPs into the communities around ours that currently don't have access to these amazing programs. So tonight we have 2 presenters, Alison Lunny and Rodrigues, who are really experts in this. We had an amazing year in both Key Club and Circle K with new charters, despite the pandemic. And so both of them worked Alison and the Circle K district chartered 2 new clubs this past year. In Key Club, we chartered 7, not to brag or anything. But Anna was Lieutenant Governor for Southeastern Massachusetts and Rhode Island and was involved with chartering 2 of those 7 clubs. And so they both have a wealth of experience and a wealth of knowledge to share with you this evening. I also do want to put out a quick plug that even though we're talking about chartering SLP clubs, these principles apply to rebuilding SLP clubs. And that's something that all of our Kiwanis clubs are going to have to do next school year as we come back from, a year and a half of remote school, and we have to rebuild these clubs to their former strength. So without further ado, I will turn it over to the much more intelligent and better presenters.
Thank you, Will. So Anna and I will begin by talking a little bit about why you should get involved with SLPs beyond the fact that we're great. So here are some points about us, and I'll start talking, then I'll let Anna give some points too, some additional thoughts. But it's a great way to meet a lot of interested and caring people. It's a great way to mentor budding student leaders so that they can greaten their potential. And it's also a great way to recruit future Kiwanians, because one day they're no longer going to be students, or they'll just be continued contributors to their communities, and you'll be able to recruit them into your own club in some cases. And Anna, if you have additional thoughts.
Yeah, so I can pretty much confirm everything that Alison has just mentioned. I think just to highlight from what I know about Kiwanis, I'm not a Kiwanian. I'll put that right out there. My only, K family experience right now is having been a Key Clubber. But Key Clubbers are all, they have exactly. Key Clubbers all really have one thing in common, and it's really what brings them to Key Club is that they love their community. And from what I know about Kiwanis, that's really foundational to everything that Kiwanis believes in. It's that building up in the community. And oftentimes, I would say almost always, Key Clubbers, because they often share the same communities as Kiwanians, they are just so passionate about working alongside those Kiwanis clubs on their projects, on their different service fundraisers, whatever that they might have going on. So really, in a way, by getting involved with an SLP, you're extending another arm into your club. You're making like a Kiwanis part 2. And I think from a Key Club perspective, it's like having a Key Club part 2. So it's really just a relationship that makes so much sense. I've really benefited from it a lot, and just hearing the voices of young people and the things that matter to them about their community just makes your club more informed as well. So ditto everything that Alison said, and I would add to that, why wouldn't you want a Kiwanis Part 2 in your community?
Very well put. And so we're going to go over a little bit of the nuts and bolts of the chartering process. Anna and I will kind of bounce back and forth between each of these points. And all this information can be found on the Kiwanis website too. And this will apply for all SLPs. This is kind of generic language. And I know Key Club and Circle K have their own chartering form, and that will have a chartering checklist and specific to-dos on what to do, because they work with schools and colleges and universities. So the first step is generally decide where the club should be hosted. Most clubs are school-based, so based on the club you want to start, find the school or community organization that makes sense for you and reach out to them. And then Anna, do you want to do the next one? Then we can just alternate.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. So a lot of the times you'll find these groups, already set aside in schools, which is really awesome. But oftentimes the financial burden of charting a Key Club, since there is a fee associated with it, is something that you have to consider. So as a sponsoring, Kiwanis of an SLP, just make sure you have those funds set aside in your budget so that the program can exist and thrive.
Yeah, and the next step is identifying some organization members to be the advisor for these SLPs. So you might, when considering all of the people in your club, you might want to see someone who has a specific interest or the time to devote to an organization. They'll need to be available for club meetings and for the club student leaders or just the club leaders. And so this is like the Kiwanis advisor, and from the student perspective, the Kiwanis advisor is really their go-to contact for all questions regarding the Kiwanis family. Even sometimes if they can't connect with their district, they'll reach out to their Kiwanis advisor first. So being available and ready to answer questions as they come up or direct questions as needed is an important part of this process.
Yeah, so the next really big part of this whole process is making sure that everybody knows what's going on. And that really does mean everybody. I think a lot of the times when we talk about expansion, it can be very short-sighted, as in like, oh, we want to get this many clubs chartered. And that's great, but I think really the best, most effective way to go about it is to be thinking long-term. So when you're reaching out to, if it's a key club, it'll be a school. If you're reaching out to a school, just make sure you take the time to meet with any principals, any teachers, any students that might be involved, but especially those administrators, to make sure that they understand what's expected of a key club, what are the central goals of key club, and just make sure everybody's on board. And oftentimes that has like a dual effect of also making them very, very excited about key club. So that's a very important step and worth your while to make sure it's done well.
And the next step is to kind of set up the foundations for this club. So you can help the host site recruit charter members and elect charter officers. So I know for Circle K, at least, this is the very basic first step of setting a foundation for the club as it'll go forward through its chartering process. And kind of like the gap between this step and the next step is kind of big. And in this kind of like period, you'll be working with the club to develop leadership skills among their leadership team, developing connections with their community to start serving, recruiting members, and all of the great things that comes along with just setting up the foundation and the cornerstone blocks for their club.
Yeah, and I would add to that, regarding that step, this is a really good time to establish a good relationship with whatever, SLP you're instituting. The last thing you want is for them to feel, not comfortable coming to you, or that your Kiwanis is distant from them. So as much as you can, try and make yourself available to answer questions. When I was chartering clubs, back in the day during my term, I really made it a priority to meet often, even if it was for just a short check-in time with the point people from each club. When I was chartering Durfee High School in Fall River, I met with the person that was going to be president of that club, the student, several times. I helped her figure out, work through the elections, work through the chartering ceremonies, and the same with the advisor. So just making that relationship as strong as you can from the outset is really setting yourself up for success, and makes this next step easier, much easier. So there is a charter petition, a membership roster, and fees that need to be sent in to Kiwanis International to make whatever SLP you are chartering official. So it's good. I find checklists are really useful for these things, even especially if you have one person that's supposed to be the point person, that Kiwanis advisor for sending these things in. But don't take this as like a yield sign at all for your stop sign. Worse yet, for your SLP chartering. This can be a time where your club can be holding meetings and service projects and different things like that, while all that information can be processed, because it can take a while at times.
Yeah, no. And if you have any questions like along this entire process of specific issues that your club is or your SLP is having, or just like relationship building in general, I know that the district like support network that exists with all the SLPs is generally pretty strong. And so at any given point, you can reach out to the districts. I know the Circle K district board at least provides a lot of resources to their chartering clubs. And this is an opportunity to connect yourself to them, and you don't need to be an expert, but you just need to be enthusiastic, ready to help, and ready to learn. And you can learn alongside district board members who are happy to help. I know Anna and I have both been involved with the chartering of clubs, sitting in on meetings, introducing like SLP chartering members with their Kiwanis advisor, and it's fun to be in that room when they enter the room for the first time. You're like, this person meet this person, and they'll get to know each other more than you would get to know either of them individually. And so the final step, once your petition is approved, is to have a charter ceremony. So once you receive your official charter, any bells and whistles that you get along the way with your funds, you can present the club banner if you bought one, and all of that fun stuff that goes with celebrating the beginning of a new club. And the work doesn't, while this is the last bullet point in how to charter an SLP, the work doesn't stop here. You'll still remain their Kiwanis advisors, and you'll remain as their sponsoring Kiwanis club for the indefinite future. So it's like Anna was saying, you're really setting the foundation blocks in these stages, but you need to continue to follow through and support them throughout their entire club life cycle, because it's a really great opportunity to continue relationship building. And the beauty with a lot of SLPs is that a lot of them are kind of like school based. So a lot of students will come and go. So every few years, they'll feel like a whole new club is there with a different personality and different people. And that's part of what's exciting about these SLPs. So our next point is about COVID and chartering. We've touched upon this a little bit since Anna and I both served terms where COVID was the name of the day and unprecedented year was thrown around a lot. And we talked also a little bit about like the success Key Club and Circle K has had in the last year with growth. So New England, the New England district of Circle K chartered 2 clubs last year, and we currently have 5 interested chartering clubs. I know Key Club chartered more technically, but if you talk percentage growth, we grew a ton in the last year, and I think we grew the most of any Circle K district in all of Circle K International. And I'll throw it off to Anna to like talk about her successes too.
Yeah, well, you'd be surprised. You think that a year where everything is remote and students are, at least for the first part of the year, and from a high schooler's perspective, and I guess even from a college perspective too, just like sitting on their laptops on Zoom all day would make them less motivated. But I think, and this speaks a lot to just like Key Club in general, and just in general Kiwanis values, a lot of people were motivated to start SLPs because they saw an increased need in their community. So for Key Club, it's the caring our way of life. There was no greater need for caring than the COVID-19 pandemic, at least in the time that I've been alive. So I think it made for even stronger Key Clubs and SLPs in general, just because people were so motivated and had to work harder for that process. So COVID did not stop motivated students, and I don't think it usually does. And I think after this pandemic, you'll find that a lot of groups that are considering starting an SLP because of this past year, year and a half, whatever it's been, the tough time that we had was so long. And for a lot of people, it really showed them what it meant to serve and what it meant to be compassionate. There's a lot more interest in joining the SLP and Kiwanis family. So.
Yeah, I think the point about bouncing back is also important because I know at least for a lot of college students, like in this organization and another student organization I'm heavily involved with, we're expecting a lot more chartering clubs in the next year as people start to go back to campuses and are reconnecting with their like friend circles, and they are kind of like sitting around like, what do I want to do with my time and how do I make this valuable? And a lot of the times that turns into investing your time into the community in which you are living in. And so it's really exciting to see how the pandemic didn't stop Circle K and Key Club and all these other SLPs from chartering, but it's also exciting to see how this pandemic is motivating people when they come back together and to charter these new clubs and to serve their community in tangible ways. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So we have an overview of costs here for each of the different SLPs. As you can see, everyone is just a little bit different, and there's a lower cost and a more expensive cost depending on whether or not the SLP gets a banner. So for a Key Club, it's $600 a year. Again, $400 for a banner. Circle K, $600. Action is $600. K Kid is $300, and Builders Club are $600. And then after that initial charter fee, there's going to be dues or another fee. In the case of Key Club, it's dues, but there's another fee that is associated with that. That the club is responsible for paying that. Sponsoring Kiwanis Club can also help out with. It's important to note that that future year's cost is not included in the first year. So again, when it comes to Key Club, the charter fee is $600 if you're going to get a banner, $400 if not. And in that year, those Key Clubbers do not have to be responsible for their dues or that $10.50 a year. So, and dues can get a little more complicated, but that's pretty much an overview.
Yeah, and another note is that this cost doesn't necessarily have to fall 100% on the sponsoring Kiwanis Club. A lot of times we highly encourage our student organizations to become self-sufficient and try to procure funding through either at Circle K, through their universities and schools, in addition to fundraising and sometimes subsidizing with a per member cost. So kind of like individual member dues. So when you're looking at this and doing the math and you're like, well, I want a really big like Circle K club, and then like you do the math times 29, and then you're like, this is not sustainable. That's not necessarily the case. And also note on the Circle K, $29 per member, there's 2 asterisks next to that. That's just because right now the per member international fee is currently being discussed and will be voted on during our next international council meeting, when all of the dues amendment proposal will be proposed. So as you can expect, that number is in fluctuation by the day and by person, even in their opinions. So don't write that down like and be like, that's it forever. So that was just a little side note on that. Yeah.
Alison, before we do this slide, can I go rogue on you for a second?
Go right ahead.
Can you go back to the slide with the link to the charter form and bring that up?
Yeah.
So I did want to just quickly show everyone this online chartering form. So this is new as of maybe 2 years ago. And this online form, so it's slp-chartering.kiwanis.org, is the new petition to charter for Key Club and Circle K. For Action Club, Builders Club, and K Kids, they still use a paper form, which you can download as a PDF from the website, fill out, and mail in. This online chartering form is like the greatest thing that's ever happened in the world of SLP chartering because it cuts down the processing time from months to days. It's amazing. But I did just want to point out just very quickly that this form, if you scroll up a little here, there's a little checklist here of different things to make sure to get together when you're chartering an SLP club. I actually was just going to go over the ones that were on the page there.
Oh, okay.
We talked a little bit about finding a site, finding advisors. So for the form, you'll need to identify both a faculty advisor. So that's typically a teacher, a guidance counselor, or in the case of Circle K, it's often somebody that works at the college community service office, just someone who works for the host institution, as well as the Kiwanis advisor. And the one thing that I did want to make sure to mention is that the way that Kiwanis International deals with background checks for Kiwanis advisors has changed a little bit in the past year. So one of the things that we're seeing is that the person who is a Kiwanis advisor for an SLP needs to have a background check from Kiwanis International. That background check costs $25. You fill out a form online. It gets processed pretty quickly, and then it lasts for 2 years. They will actually not charter a new SLP until the Kiwanis advisor has been background checked. And unfortunately, that's something that has been a hurdle for us, especially when we have some older Kiwanians who aren't as comfortable with filling out the online form. So just something to think about as you're laying the groundwork for chartering a new SLP, and this applies to all of the branches. If you have someone in your club that is interested in being the Kiwanis advisor, make sure to go ahead and get their background check done through Kiwanis International, and then that way that will be all set before you start the chartering process. Also on here, there's a member roster, which is a form that you download. It's a spreadsheet. So typically in Key Club, we send that to the faculty advisor, and we say, hey, fill this out with all of the members. And then at the end, after you submit this form online, it actually has an opportunity, and this is my very clever transition back to the slides. It has an opportunity for you to actually pay online with a credit or debit card, which is another new feature, and another one that's really exciting for me, at least. Probably not for many other people. So the charter fees, you can pay online. You can also pay by check if your club prefers to operate that way. So there is an opportunity at the end to print out an invoice or to pay online. So the process for Key Club and Circle K is super streamlined compared to what it used to be. For the other branches, you can Google, Action Club petition to charter and find the form, the PDF form on their website. But the next slide we had on here was about existing clubs. So I wanted to quickly go over some terminology. When we talk about chartering, we often also talk about reactivating a Key Club or a Circle K. I'm going to say Key Club a lot. I mean more globally than that, and I apologize to the other branches. I'm a little biased. So for Key Club and Circle K and Action Club, basically there are per member dues that the SLP club has to pay each year. The dues process for at least Key Club and Circle K typically starts when the school year starts in September. And then the Kiwanis year flips over October 1. And basically from that point on, they can log into the membership update center, update their roster, and pay dues. When a Key Club doesn't do that by February 1st, which is many months later, they get put on suspended status. So you see us talk about suspended Key Clubs and suspended Circle K clubs around February every year. Basically, once a club has been suspended, they're on warning, they're on probation. They haven't paid dues for this year, and they need to pay it before the end of the Kiwanis year, before September 30, in order to retain their charter status. We then have Key Clubs that didn't pay dues. October 1 hits, they get put onto inactive status. When a club is inactive, Key Club or Circle K is inactive, basically what that means is that they did not pay dues in a previous year. And they're going to stay listed as an inactive club for 3 years, giving them an opportunity to rebuild and reactivate before they are charter revoked. In most years, in order to reactivate a Key Club, you have to submit a petition to reactivate, which is still a paper form. And believe it or not, that's the most inconvenient part of this whole process is the form, as well as a $100 fee and dues for that current year. So for example, if in this coming fall you wanted to reactivate a Key Club not this year, but in other years, you would need to get the petition, fill it out, submit it, in addition $100 plus the dues. I mentioned this, we're going to talk a lot more about this as we get into the fall, but Kiwanis International is launching a program called Homecoming that is basically geared towards trying to build our SLPs back up to where they were before COVID, trying to welcome these clubs home to the Kiwanis family. So basically what this means for us is that in fall 2021, they're waiving all reactivation fees. And this doesn't just apply to key clubs that haven't paid this year, that haven't paid last year. If you have a key club that didn't pay in 2019 or 2018, they'll take them back and they'll waive that fee. So this is a great opportunity for us to rebuild some of these key clubs, some of these Circle Ks, some of these other SLPs that have kind of disappeared over the past few years. This past year, a lot of key clubs and Circle K clubs went on what we've been calling a COVID hiatus. A COVID is the term they use in the Kiwanis International system. But basically, clubs that haven't been able to meet have gone on a hiatus for the year. And so they weren't charged dues because they weren't operating this past year. But all of those clubs, we're going to have to work again to rebuild them in the fall. So for any key club and any Circle K club, I can't speak about the others because I don't actually know how the mechanics of those work. But for any key club or any Circle K club that has been on hiatus this past year or that has been inactive this past year, in the fall, they will be able to get back on active status simply by paying dues for the 21-22 year, school year. So it's a great opportunity for us to bring some of these key clubs, some of these Circle K clubs, and some of these other SLPs back into the fold.
Yeah, and just as a note on that, when you're paying the 2021 to 2022 dues, make sure you pay it when they open instead of paying in like September. That's an issue I can foresee happening sometimes, because if you pay in September, you're technically paying last year's dues. So reach out to your district administrator for questions if that sounds confusing. So our next section is on finding an SLP to sponsor. And so Anna and I will kind of bounce back and forth for this one too. So how can you find the SLP spirit? So first off, reach out to the corresponding SLP district and see if they can pair you up with interested students or groups. I know, coming from a district perspective, we're always looking for new people to help sponsor the clubs that we are currently trying to charter. And in one of our recent cases, one of our clubs just went off and got chartered without being paired with a sponsor in Kiwanis yet. So we are always like looking. So if we do have a club in your area that we could pair you up with, we would love to do that, and that would make our job a lot easier. And likewise, if you have an interest in an area but you don't really have a contact yet, there may be someone within the district community that like knows a friend who goes to a college or like goes to high school in that area, and they could like kind of work their relationships that way. Another way is to reach out to local university or school community service offices or community centers to see if there's a need for organized community service groups. And then this is a little Circle K centric because I don't recommend talking to children and advertising a club to them, because that might sound a little sketchy. But regularly serve in areas close to college campuses, and if you meet some college students who are just there because they're being great community citizens, advertise like Circle K, and it's a way to meet initiate something on a student campus, to meet other like-minded, like community service oriented individuals, and to kind of like serve the community in a greater way, because then you'll be bringing people who aren't as like internally motivated to go to a website to sign up for something. I know something coming from someone, I didn't charter a Circle K club, but I chartered another student organization on my campus. We wouldn't have been able to charter if we didn't talk to someone who just was tangentially related to this organization, and we saw a need on our campus, and so we just chartered a club, or it was, I guess it's not called a club, but we chartered a chapter. So that was kind of like a personal recommendation. Anna, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
Yeah, I would just add to that a more key club, a specific example. Again, going back to that community aspect of things, if there is a high school in your area, or, maybe it is an elementary school or a middle school, right? And you're looking at those other SLP type clubs, you can often find schools that already have leadership groups or community service groups that aren't affiliated with a larger organization. So maybe it's just called a community service club or a leadership guild or something like that. And oftentimes those students really benefit and really look forward to the international district and like sub levels and sort of, we talk about the SLPs, all the SLPs that exist, all the Kiwanis family, parts that exist, which is what, obviously, we all know this because we're here. That's what makes the Kiwanis family unique and makes us really special. So if you are a part of a community like that, and your local, for example, high school, they have a really strong community service club, that's a really good opportunity to step in and to say, we have the same goals as you. We share the same vision for our community. Let's see if we can unite and make this a little bit more official and give you all of the resources to, just make your organization stronger. So yeah, those are my words of wisdom.
Great. And our next section is moving into supporting to like the kind of like support angle of these chartering SLPs. So once you're kind of paired up with someone, you found an SLP club, or maybe this is about a club that kind of was on COVID hiatus and they're coming back. And so you kind of have this new group of leaders that are like 2 years younger than what you remember, or the club needs to rebuild because they lost a lot of membership. So now you're sponsoring an SLP club. Now what? And so on like the Circle K, and I'm sure Key Club side, what do we tell our members about you guys? We always tell our members that there are so many benefits to connecting with their sponsor in Kiwanis. And I know that both Key Club and Circle K have a district Kiwanis Family Relations Chair whose job is specifically to strengthen the relationship between clubs and their sponsoring Kiwanis and the district Kiwanis. So we always say that it helps strengthen the club structure. It helps you feel like you're a part of a greater global organization. It provides opportunities for mentorship. Sometimes Kiwanis clubs help out with funding and fundraising, and we'll do joint fundraising events with you. And then they also provide a great resource for networking and can provide work references if you're involved with them on kind of like a leadership mentor level. I'm not sure, Anna, if there's anything else you advertise to Key Clubs about Kiwanis.
Well, I will say, Key Clubbers, high schoolers, even college students who really like food. So that can often be a very driving factor. If your Kiwanis Club meets in a luncheon format, I will say that Key Clubbers do really appreciate that free chicken parm and the opportunity to, meet members of their community. I shouldn't focus too much on the chicken parm. I remember for me when I was entering high school and I had Key Club as that sort of anchor for me. I live in a pretty big community, so it was actually really cool to be able to meet people that, were involved in city council, school committees, local businesses, and things like that. So going back, Alison mentioned this, just really connecting that next generation to your community is always a, really, really fantastic thing, and having those conversations. So, yeah.
Yeah, great. Food is a great motivator for college students too. I can attest to that, especially since we're learning to cook on our own, so we don't necessarily have the best cooking at home. All right, and so I'll turn it over to Maryann and Will to talk about sponsoring a new SLP and kind of like some tips and tricks and lessons learned along the way.
Thanks. Some of this may seem fairly I don't know, simple's not really the right word, but maybe common sense, but it's always good to reinforce it. I think, sometimes we get lost in the little details that we forget about the big picture. And at the end of the day, we're here to serve the communities that we're in, and we're here as, Kiwanians to help grow our sponsored leaders, the youth, to be stronger leaders, better community citizens, and all that other stuff. So, we can review this slightly, and I know that there are some questions that are popping up, so we'll make sure to address those as well. you want to make sure that you schedule regular recurring meetings with your student leaders and advisors and coordinate with the faculty advisor to troubleshoot any issues the club is facing. You are another bridge between the club and the district. So if the club has lost communication with the various district boards or district leadership, you can help provide and troubleshoot again where needed if the club is struggling with anything. And one of the things we're really trying to build is to connect with other club advisors to share successes, learn from growth opportunities, provide a platform to share ideas and see what's successful and what's not. So there is also that resource for the Kiwanis advisors.
In addition to that, one of the most powerful things that you can do as a Kiwanis club when you're sponsoring a new Key Club or Circle K is to sponsor some of their leaders to go to the district convention, as they call it in Circle K, or the district educational conference, as we call it in Key Club. It's really a great opportunity. I say all the time when we're talking about SLPs, when we're talking about trying to build clubs and get schools to buy in, we're competing with Rotary. Rotary has the Interact program in high schools. And there's two differences between Key Club and Interact. Number one, Interact is free and Key Club costs money. And the second difference is Interact is just a club at that school. Key Club is part of a global service, the world's largest high school student-led global service organization. And so when we are building a new Key Club, when we're getting a school to buy into the Key Club program, we need to make sure to offer them a piece of that global organization. Just doing service in the school, in the community, you don't need to pay dues to do that. Doing service with Kiwanis, doing service with other Key Clubs, going to divisional meetings, going to district events, that's all part of that additional value that you get when you pay $10.50 to be a member of Key Club versus Interact, which you get what you pay for. You can tell them I said that. So sponsoring some of those leaders to go to Decon will be their first real introduction to the larger Key Club and larger Circle K organization. And I can tell you that it is the most powerful thing you can do, because they will leave that weekend with so many ideas, with so much enthusiasm. They've just met hundreds of people who have the same passion that they do, and they've learned from other clubs about different projects that they could bring back to their own club. So really, I say charter fee and decon are the two things you want to budget for in that first year, because it's really a great opportunity to get that club just, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, kickstarted. Really put a lot of pep in their step, I guess, to get them going. In addition, same thing, doing service projects with that Key Club, inviting them to Kiwanis service projects, maybe planning something together. I remember when I was in Key Club, my sponsoring Kiwanis Club was really, the big thing they did was flower sales. They had a Mother's Day flower sale, an Easter flower sale, and then around Christmas time, they sold poinsettias. And that was always a great opportunity for Key Club. And we would go to those sales. We would help, carry plants from the back up to the, the front, and help people carry plants to their cars, and kind of do some of that manual labor that maybe not all of the Kiwanians could do as much. But we always got a piece of the proceeds. So when we sold poinsettias, we actually would sell them at the school, and then we would get half of the profit from the ones that we sold. And that helped our club be able to be more strong and successful. And of course, some of the money that the Kiwanis Club raised also then supported us too, which I don't think we realized at the time. But really developing those connections together, once again, kind of adds that added bonus of, this is why you're a Key Club, not just, the high school community service club. After you charter the club, throw a party. Have a charter ceremony, invite, the principal, invite the mayor, invite all kinds of people, and really show off this new Key Club and celebrate them. And then just generally thinking about finances, especially for Circle K. It really varies. We find a lot of Key Clubs have a little more ability to fundraise because the Key Club students are in the community. They have parents that are willing to purchase something. They have family, they have friends, they have neighbors that they can easily fundraise from. Circle Kers tend to be a little more in a bubble on their college campus. So Circle Kers really have a limited ability to fundraise because everybody that they interact with on a daily basis has no money and is incurring hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt. So just broadly speaking, when you're chartering a Circle K, you really got to think about ongoing financial support. And that's not just Kiwanis giving money, but how can you develop programs where the Circle Kers can fundraise to support themselves?
Yeah, and just a little bit on that note too, like I know our secretary treasurer, our district officer who's kind of in charge of finances, they work a lot with clubs who are trying to figure out self-sufficient funding. And over the years, we picked up some tips and tricks and like in talking to our neighbors and other districts. So we picked up a few tips and tricks on how to like fundraise and kind of like request funding from school, from the university itself. So if you do kind of like figure out you're out of ideas for Circle K clubs, reach out to the district and we'd be happy to help. I say we, I guess I'm a has-been in the district these days, but Maryann and whoever is active in the district would be more than happy to help you find creative solutions to these problems. Yeah. So then we'll go into support after year one.
I think this is you, Maryann.
It's waiting. I think one thing that's really important about sponsoring an SLP, I think for us in Kiwanis, we kind of think very long term. We're in Kiwanis for the rest of our lives, and as a younger person, that hopefully will be a very long time. But these members of SLPs, they're in the organization for 4 years, and so it's very easy for there to be greater turnover, and it's very easy for a club to be very active and then not active at all. And so I think one of the key points in supporting an SLP, after year one, as we're going along, is just making sure that enthusiasm and drive, I guess, is present every year, and helping the leadership create succession plans. So what's going to happen after they leave? Okay, they graduate next year. What happens to the club after that? So you guys are really sort of the backbone, if you will, to kind of make sure the club, continues to grow year after year. And so some of the important things to help support clubs is, maintain constant communication. I always think that it's important to attend club meetings regularly on your end. However, it's also important to invite them to your events and to your meetings, so that there's a good communication and relationship building there. Host and participate in each other's service projects, and be a motivator for these students. They're excited, they want to do stuff, they're starting their lives, they're young adults, and so be a motivator for them to continue not only the good stuff they do with Kiwanis, but also to continue to grow in their personal lives. And one thing that's not on here, but should be, is to have fun, because that's what it's all about, right? So if you go to the next page, Alison, our email addresses are listed here, and Anna can provide a recent one, an up-to-date one. But I think, overall, the main resources that you guys have for SLPs is to reach out to the appropriate SLP district administrator, and they can point you in the right direction. They can connect you with the correct person who can help charter the club or get in touch with the club or whatever you guys need. So Will and I for Circle K and Key Club, and Elise or Brian could drop in the chat possibly the other administrators' communication.
And just to add on to that, Maryann, I know for Key Club, Key Club and Circle K are unique among the SLPs because we have student leaders who are out there to help. I always personally like to structure it so that adults work with adults and students work with students. So if you have any questions about chartering a Key Club, please feel free to reach out to me. I might send you off to one of my other committee members because that's the joy of having a committee. You know, as we get the club going, that's where we'll call on someone like Anna to really work with the students at the school and help motivate them, help guide them. So that's kind of for any questions you have. I think administrators are great contacts.
Well, thank you all so much, but you are not done yet. We have a number of questions for you, and we're going to do things a little bit differently this week, Kiwanians. Anna is going to ask all the questions. We've sent them from the chat to her, and she will ask all the questions and probably answer some of them. But if you have any questions, feel free to send them in the chat, or if you're on Facebook, feel free to post them in the comments. Anna, take it away.
Awesome. Yeah. So our first question is how much money should we budget to charter a club? How much money should we budget each year to support a club? So we do have a slide. I don't know if Alison wants to pull it back up again. That details all the costs for chartering. I know for Key Club, to initiate a charter, it's $400 to just do it, and an additional, well, not an additional $600, $400 without a banner, $600 with a banner. And that's like your startup costs. The Key Club is responsible for paying $10.50 of dues to International each year. That can, and I'm again speaking only from a Key Club perspective because that's what I know, that can vary depending on different districts and clubs because sometimes different, you know, those bodies will decide to add on fees to support other things, but $10.50 is sort of the baseline. In terms of like additional costs that you would be worried about to support a club, decon is a really, really big thing. You know, decon is, I can't say enough amazing things about decon. It's such a great way to energize the people that are involved in whatever SLP you're you know, associated with. So whenever possible, if it's, you know, in your club's means, I would definitely say, as a person that's been to decon, try your absolute best to make sure that there's money, at least, you know, every time there's a leadership turnover for a convention as such. And, you know, different clubs will also have different needs in terms of maybe a club will need more support paying for their dues, while another club might be able to be more self-sustainable, as we've already mentioned. So I don't know if anybody wants to add to that in terms of more specifics.
Anna, I would add on there that it really depends on the school as well. So in both in cases of Key Clubs and in cases of Circle K, sometimes the schools have funding. And if this, I always like to say, if the school, especially if it's a big university that charges way too much for its education, if the school's willing to pitch in some money, there's no need to take it away from Kiwanis. But for the Key Club, for the Circle K, for all the SLPs, really, I do recommend having a couple $100s, and it depends on the size of the school, really, budgeted for assistance with dues. And that's really something that has become, it's an issue in every community. In some communities, it's a much greater issue. We have some Key Clubs that the Kiwanis Club just pays the entire dues bill because the students in that school don't have the means to pay dues. In a lot of other examples, we have basically an agreement between Kiwanis and the faculty advisor, and the faculty advisor will basically say, if you want to be a member of Key Club and you can't afford it, just let me know offline and Kiwanis will take care of it. And then the Kiwanis Club will pay for, you know, 2-3 members' dues for that year. So that's something to think about. With Circle K, going to this new, or returning, I should say, because this is how it was when I was in Circle K and Maryann was in Circle K, but returning to the per member dues for Circle K, $30 is a lot to ask all at once from a college kid. So a lot of Circle K clubs may need some additional help with those dues just to get them collected. With decon, on the Key Club side, we charge about $170 to attend decon. That includes rooming, and 1 meal each day. In addition, there'll be travel expenses. And in Key Club, we need a chaperone to go with the students. So one of the things that we often think about is, maybe sponsoring the faculty advisor to go, because unless the faculty advisor can get reimbursed by the school for it, that's a pretty big cost for the advisor to pay out of pocket. So it really depends. There's a lot of different expenses that can pop up, and it's also a matter of what your Kiwanis club wants to budget. My Kiwanis club has very, very little money, like 3 digits worth of money, and we sponsor 2.5 Circle Ks and a Key Club. So we make it work. So it really all depends.
Moral of the story is just communicate with whatever SLP you are associated with. Just see what they need and how you can meet those needs, how you can work together to meet those needs, and things should be all good. Alrighty. So the next question that we have, and I think this is a fantastic question. I'm always amazed that SLP members always have such a spark and excitement, especially when young people sometimes get a false reputation of being apathetic. What gets SLP members so excited about giving back? I don't know if somebody wants to jump for this one, as we've all been SLP members at one point.
I feel like that's probably a question directed at you and me, Anna. I can answer from like a college perspective. I was a Girl Scout, so when I came to college, I knew I wanted to give back to the community I was now just like displaced and I'm now a part of. And I really wanted to find out a way to like give back to my community in a way that I had like kind of set up in a more like stable way back like when I was like a Girl Scout for 12 years. And when I see people chartering clubs and when I see people like joining Circle K clubs, I really see a bunch of people who just want to like learn more about their community and want to like give back to it, because you do benefit so much from it, from a college perspective, being educated in a certain area. And I think that that's the best part about Circle K, is that it attracts people who do care about something beyond themselves. Not to say other people don't, there's many people who care about a lot of things and they care about the community who aren't in Circle K, but Circle K really attracts those types of people. And so I think that's a great part of being like an SLP sponsors, because you get to meet all of these exciting new and up and coming community leaders. And you get to work with them directly back when they're like still just developing and honing their skills.
This is Alison's way of saying that one day she's going to become famous, and you're all lucky to have been on the Zoom call with her.
Oh gosh, don't put that pressure on me.
I hyped you up. I completely agree with everything that Alison said. It's a little different from a high school perspective, just because most of the time students are serving in a Key Club with a community that they've always grown up in. They've always been a part of this community. So really at that point, it just becomes about giving back. Key Club has a very big reputation, right? Kiwanis has a very big reputation, as well as Circle K and the list, all the other SLPs. People see that logo and they're like, wow, these people, they're genuinely kind people. They're nice people. They want to give back to their communities. And that kind of attracts a certain type of person that is really energetic. And from there, the cycle continues, right? Because if I walk into a Key Club conference or a Key Club event, whatever it is, I always know that the people that I'm around are equally as passionate about serving as me, and that's a real draw for a lot of students. And then obviously my friends are here. This is an opportunity for me to get to know people in my community, all that type of stuff. So lots of benefits, I would say, from our perspective. So we have another really awesome question asking what kinds of service projects can we plan to do with our current or future SLP clubs. So I don't know if Maryann or Will, you want to go ahead and take this one.
I was kind of hoping that the students would share some of their perspectives, but I guess you guys have a significant portion of your SLP experience has been during COVID, so you probably haven't had as many opportunities to do service with Kiwanis.
I didn't want to talk too much, but
No one wants to hear from me anymore. They're all sick of me.
well, in that case, Key Clubbers, also probably Circle K, but Alison will confirm or deny after I finish my spiel. We're always excited to do pretty much everything ever. Mr. Bradford mentioned like carrying flowers into cars. That's always fun. My Key Club, or rather Kiwanis Club, the Kiwanis Club of Taunton, Massachusetts. Shout out to them. They have this really awesome fundraiser or community event, I should call it, where we have like a breakfast that we hold for members of our community that might benefit from it. So there's pancake flipping happening, there's sausages, sizzling on the griddle. We love ways to get involved. Maybe we're all not the best pancake flippers, but maybe you are, and maybe you can teach us. So those sort of interactive events where students can maybe go to the parts of their community that they haven't really experienced before, or maybe they have experienced, but they just haven't had an opportunity to use their leadership and their service commitment to better that part of their community or serve alongside that part of the community. That's always really exciting. So pretty much anything that you invite a high school student to that involves some sort of interaction. Selling raffle tickets, that's also a really fun event that I can remember from my own Key Club experience. So really, if you have an event that's important to your Kiwanis Club, especially if it's a well-attended event, invite an SLP. You know what I mean? They'll be happy to come, especially if it's important to you. They'll understand and share in that importance.
Yeah, I think a large part of it is just bringing the energy. I'm going to drop our 2 service guides that we have. The first one's a virtual service event idea guide, and then the second one's like our service partners that some of our clubs partner with throughout the district. If you haven't noticed already throughout my term, I'm a bit of a resource spreader, so I just send links to people all the time. But I think the point about like where you're passionate, like ask if they want to join in and just like bring them along, because I find that the energy is really infectious, and I find that my favorite service partners and my favorite service events that I've ever attended have just been because of the people and because of the energy within the group that I was serving with at the time, and not so much the actual the actual event. I mean, as I'm an engineer, so like if a service partner is very well organized, I'll find that very satisfying, and I'll probably sign up to go back again. But like that's very personal preference, and I think that where you're excited, your SLP like partners will be excited too. So yeah, just do all the great work that you do. Just invite SLPs to come along.
Agreed. Yes, and passion is definitely infectious. So let us get in on that. So we have a question here about Circle K, which I know nothing about, so I will defer to Alison. What is the experience of Circle K in a residential 4-year school compared to a community college?
Yeah, so in the New England district, we don't have any community colleges currently as like club members or as like clubs that are chartered in our district. But I do know a lot of districts that do have community colleges, like in 2-year universities involved. And so I can't fully speak to the differences just because I haven't worked directly with them. But what I would anticipate is the difference, and what I've kind of like heard is the difference is just like the turnover rate is a lot greater. And so a lot of times they tend to require a lot more support from their sponsoring Kiwanises and their faculty advisors, because when we were talking about how with like Key Club and like in Circle K, you tend to have like about 4-year turnover of people, but with those 2-year universities, you only have 2 years. So you have literally one class of upperclassmen and one class of underclassmen, and if you can't recruit well in 1 year, then that membership number isn't as stable. So I could see that if you are thinking about chartering or connecting with an SLP at a community college, that you kind of like keep that backbone mindset in mind as you're setting the foundation, and you really have to work to dig roots really quickly. So that way you can kind of establish a really solid organization that has a presence on the campus and that people recommend the club to others on it. I'm not sure. Yeah, go ahead, Maryann. I was going to ask if you wanted to jump in because you might have more experience than me.
I think one of the other things that's a challenge in community college is that a lot of the student population commutes to classes. And so rather than a resident-based college environment where you're sort of like looking for things to do at night, I think it's a lot harder when most of the student body is commuting to campus, and at the end of a long day of school and classes and whatever you're doing, it's hard to find a time and find the motivation to stay another hour or two after all that, and then still have to drive home. So I'm not saying it can't be done. There are, successful community college clubs in other districts, as Alison was saying. I think there's just some unique challenges that those campuses face that are not at, the traditional four-year campuses.
Yeah, so maybe different service events would be better attuned to those campuses, things like virtual events where you could attend it from wherever you are. So that way you can get home at a decent hour if you're driving in, or maybe sticking to weekend events where they don't have a specific time where they have to be back, if that kind of works out with the students' individual schedules. But I think the main theme was just like communication. So if you do have interested people, by no means don't turn them away. Find a way to direct that passion and try to find creative solutions with your district, like with the district board. And like, I'm sure we would be able to scrounge up some resources from other districts who have success stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would add to that just really quickly. Maryann mentioned, the topic of commuting. I'd like to just flip that for a second and point out that if you're commuting to a school, that probably means you're a lot more familiar with the area that it's in. Maybe you grew up there and you're probably more invested in the success of that community compared to, if you're attending a school, maybe you're going to Wentworth and something like that, and you're from South Carolina. You have a lot less of a concept of what happens around that area and how you can best serve them. So although it's definitely different in many, many ways, I wouldn't necessarily say that it's especially more difficult or especially bad. Definitely possible, and you might even find that it's more exciting. So give it a try if you're interested. So we do have one final question that we are going to finish on for tonight. This has been a really awesome discussion so far. Are there any pitfalls in sponsoring a new SLP that we should be mindful of? So I will start this off, and then, whoever else would like to comment on this can sort of jump in. I would say the biggest thing that you have to be worried about is communication, without a doubt. This is kind of a life skill. I'm sure you're all aware that communication is just like one of the big things that people always struggle with, whether it's in a workplace environment, academic environment, or in this case, a Kiwanis and SLP environment. Just make sure, as much as obviously you can't control what other people are doing, but always be checking in with your Key Club, your Circle K, your Action Club, your Builders Club, whatever it is. Always be checking in with them. Make sure that you know where their meetings are. Make sure you know what sort of events. Whenever possible, try and get those Key Clubbers, those Circle K members at your meeting to tell you what's going on. Just as an open line of communication as you can make happen. And do everything that you can to make sure that they're comfortable coming to you. As a lieutenant governor, there are times when I'd be talking to Key Clubs and they didn't know who their Kiwanis advisor was. That shouldn't ever happen. As much as you can prevent that. Make sure you don't have to be their best pal on the face of the planet, but they should know your name, they should know your face, and be around to tell you sort of what's going on. And the same thing with the faculty advisor of the school as well. So just open communication, I cannot emphasize that enough, is really, really important.
Yeah, I think you hit on the biggest one, and I was gonna say jokingly as like a startup, like the pitfall is you might end up with a student leader who's aggressively annoying, And so, but that's like honestly a good thing. But I'd say like kind of like going along with communication, persistence is something that I see is like the differentiating factor between a club that is going to get chartered and a club that kind of doesn't ever leave the chartering phase and just kind of falls off. I know like as college students, like the semester picks up, people get busy and like that happens. But I think that there's like from like a support network standpoint, being persistent is like all you can do to help the club gain its feet, and checking in every other week, every few weeks, to say like, hey, how's it going? Like if it's midterm season, like I definitely like push my like membership development chair to be like, to just check in and be like, now that midterm season's over, how's like, where are you at? Like, where's your thought process at? Let's check in and set a meeting up. And so kind of like being persistent, and therefore the lack of persistence could be a pitfall to like supporting a club during its chartering phase, because with like a high turnover of students, you can often see that if you're not persistent early on, it will fall off and lose the momentum it once had when it was an idea.
Absolutely.
I think on top of that, one of the biggest pitfalls I've seen in both Key Club and Circle K is that you need to make sure that the club recruits from every class. So if you recruit a bunch, you need in Key Club 11 people on the roster to charter a new Key Club. I think it's 15 in Circle K. If you recruit 11 seniors, how many members will the club have next year? So it's really, really important to make sure that that club is always reaching out to those freshmen. Because obviously you can be in Key Club for 2 years, you can be in Key Club for 1 year, and it can be an amazing experience. But the person that you recruit as a freshman is the person you're going to develop into a leader and develop into a club president. So really, both for new SLPs and also for existing ones, making sure that you're reaching every grade and making sure that you're involving the younger students in the school is really, really important. I've seen, especially in Circle K, I've seen it be an issue where you just have a bunch of members in the same class and that class graduates and the 3 people left decide they don't want to keep doing it. So that's a really big, important thing that we need to always remind our student leaders to make sure they're reaching out to freshmen.
Absolutely. Yes, we like to spread the wealth and keep our SLPs going for as long as possible. So I think that's just about all we have in terms of questions for tonight. Thank you all for, engaging with this presentation. Has been, from my perspective, and I'm sure Alison agrees, really lovely to present to you all tonight. This is a really fantastic group. And I think I'm going to turn it back over to somebody, Elise, maybe, to wrap us up.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anna. And if you would all please join me in a round of vigorous golf claps for all of our presenters. Thank you guys so much for being here, Maryann, Will, Alison, and Anna. We really appreciate your expertise and your enthusiasm. That was really great to hear from your perspectives. And, from a past SLP, Brian and I really both appreciate and believe that SLPs are the greatest thing that Kiwanis does by far. So we want to make sure that we're, we keep building more. So thank you guys so much for that informative session. As we wrap up, please remember to type your name and club in the chat if you have not already. This helps us to keep accurate attendance every week. So remember to write your name and club in the chat so we can make sure that your attendance is counted. According to the fabulous interclub coordinator, David, we have 14 clubs represented tonight, including Barbados. A special shout out to the Kiwanis Club of Hamilton, who consistently has had 5, Hamilton, Bermuda, who has consistently had 5 or more members attending every session for the last 17 weeks, which is what David has tracked for us. So thank you so much to all the members of the Bermuda Club. Okay, we have 2 more workshops lined up for you this month. I would ask my assistant to screen share, but I am the assistant, so I will screen share for myself. On June 16th, we will be learning about using technology to organize our club, which will provide tips and tricks on using platforms like Google Drive, Square, and Venmo, and more for improving our club's communication and organization. On June 23rd, Brian will be leading a panel discussion on literacy-focused service projects. We're going to highlight some really outstanding club projects from across the New England and Bermuda districts that focus on reading and children's literacy. You will definitely leave with some inspiring ideas that you can bring to your own community. The final June workshop on June 20, oh, it says June 29th, but it actually is June 30th, is how to build diverse community partnerships. You are in a treat, or really in for a treat with this session, because we are hosting Key Club members Harper Treshik and Jordan Stein from Fairfield Ludlow High School in Fairfield, Connecticut, who will talk about how their members worked with the community organizations in shared service projects to help feed the community. They will provide resources, action steps, and inspiration to jumpstart your own community partnerships. So Brian will drop a link in the chat. So if you'd like to sign up for the additional workshops or share the registration with a fellow club member, you are able to do that. Following these June workshops, we will provide officer training on Wednesday evenings in July and early August. We'll have the schedule available very soon, and we'll ask for your help in ensuring that all club officers know about and take advantage of these free virtual trainings. Your next opportunity for Kiwanis education will be at the district convention, which will be all in person this summer, August 20th to 22nd in Leominster, Massachusetts. Then, beginning in September, our virtual workshop series will move to once a month. We hope that you will continue to join us into the summer, and then as we move forward, monthly in the fall. Remember to encourage your fellow club members to join us for all these free Kiwanis education opportunities. You can find more information on our district Facebook page, in our district Facebook group, and at newenglandkiwanis.org. We also have a playlist on our YouTube channel. There will be a link in the chat for all of these so that you can share these recordings with your club members who are unable to attend live. To access resources from our past workshops, take a look at the confirmation email you received today and click on the virtual workshop materials link at the bottom of the email. It will take you to a Google Drive folder where you can find the presentations from all of our virtual workshops. Brian sent me his script, which is why it sounds exactly like what he's saying, but I'm going to change it a little bit here. And I just want to say thank you to our fearless leader, Brian Cofrancesco, for planning 26 workshops so far this year, and to the other education committee members, Judy Barrett and David Griffin, who help with the behind the scenes things to help make these weekly workshops successful. As I said at the beginning, we're on our 26th week, and the team is doing so much work to provide all of this education. So make sure to give a big round of applause, especially to Brian, who never gets recognized because he's always doing the talking. And with that, thank you again to our presenters for being here this evening and educating us, and thanks to all of you for joining and participating in these weekly workshops. I hope you leave tonight with inspiration and excitement for building a new SLP club. Please stay safe, be well, and we will see you next week for our session on using technology to organize your club. Have a good night, everyone.